Okay, let's just jump straight into this review. So first we're going to start with Word documents, mail merges, and formatting. So if you remember from the homework, you were being asked to do something like this, where you had a line for address, a line for something like zip code, and a line for something like phone number. And I'm not going to actually type those in, but pretend that there's something here. And so the homework had asked you to make these into a certain type of font, certain type of size, and to use heading 1 with modifications. And a lot of people lost points on this because they didn't really understand what the modifications meant. So what that was asking you, it's important to know, is you need to use heading 1 right here, but you need to right click and modify. And so the instructions gave you what kind of font it wanted, what kind of size it wanted, whether or not it was bolded, and what kind of font color there was. So once I make those changes and hit OK, I can see that those changes were saved up here in my heading 1. So I can see that the text is green, it's a different font. So I can highlight all this, click on this, and now I've applied the modifications through my heading 1 style. So with that out of the way, the next thing that I saw people making a mistake of was they had to basically move all of this in toward the 3-inch mark. And the way they did this was through the left indent tab. They just moved it like that, and they thought, alright, it's at the 3-inch mark, I'm good, I'm done. But no, the way the instructions had asked you was that, let me just highlight all this. The way the instructions had asked you to do it was to use the left tab indent. So what does that mean? Well, first what we need to do is we need to go to the View tab and we need to make sure that the ruler is turned on. Once we make sure that the ruler is turned on, we have this little thingy here showing up at the far left. And so this shows me that I can place left tabs along my ruler. If I'm being asked to do center tab or right tab, I can just click on this icon and it's going to cycle through those options. But we need to use the left tab, and I just need to click on the 3-inch mark over here. So notice that I was highlighting all 3 of these lines because all 3 of these lines need to be at the 3-inch mark. Highlight all of these 3, click on the 3 up here, and then you're going to have a left tab indent. So what I can do then is just hit the tab key on my keyboard, hit the tab key on my keyboard, and hit the tab key on my keyboard. So that's how it should be done, and I think the instructions had also asked you to do it for your salutation, but I think you guys get the point. Okay, so next thing, so let's actually do a mail merge, because it's been a while, some people might have forgotten the details, and we can go over some of the things that students were missing with the mail merges. So first, if you go to the Mailings tab, you can, so this is what it's going to look like for Macs. I'm actually on a PC, so some things might look a little different. But for Macs, you use Start Mail Merge, and this all looks good. We already have a letter template. So what we need to do is we need to go to Select Recipients and type a new list. So click on that. And so this is where it gets a little different with Macs. I believe the next window it shows is what field types you want to include in your list. Just click Next, and it's going to give you a window where you can start typing in the names of people. So we're just going to work with first and last name. For Macs, it's going to show a plus or a minus sign down here. You just click on the plus, you can add new users to this. So I'm just going to type in 3 names. So Sarah Smith should be a name that you're all familiar with at this point. So I'm satisfied with my 3 names. I'm going to click OK. And it's going to ask me to save my list. So on a PC, it's going to save as a .mdb. On a Mac, it's going to save as a .docx. So keep that in mind. Save. And now I have my recipient list that is being used. I don't need to make any edits to the recipient list, but if you need to, you can click here, but we're not going to worry about that. The next thing we need to do is we actually need to start inserting our first and last names into this template. So what we do is we go to Insert Mail Merge field up here, and I'm just gonna hover over, click on it, and click on first name. So what's really important is that, so let me do that one more time. As I'm doing this, I need to click my cursor over here, include the space, and now I can start inserting exactly where my cursor had left off. So I'm going to choose first name, space, and the space is really important. A lot of students miss out on the space. So first name and then last name. So make sure it looks something like this, where you have a space in between first name and last name, and there is no space between last name and the comma. So this looks good to me. I can preview results. So that's basically going to show what it's going to look like once it is entered in my first and last names from my list. So that looks fine. What I need to do now is I need to finish and merge, edit individual documents, merge records all. Okay. So now this document is a completely new document that's been generated, and this is going to have all three letters combined into one. So this is what we expected in the homework. This is something that you're going to need to know for the lab final. You want to save this version. So this you can consider as your final mail merge version. So this is what you want to save. You want to make sure you're saving this in the right place that you can put reference to. Save. And okay. So that's how you finish a mail merge. So don't forget that last step. You need to be submitting. You need to have a document that has all three combined into one. So that's important. Okay, so I just realized that when I do the zoom in, it kind of messes up with where the cursor lines up. So I'm just not going to zoom in. But I think you can all see it through your video screens or whatever. It's also probably going to be obvious that obviously I didn't cover everything that we did in our Word lesson, but I wanted to go over the ones that most students missed on in the homeworks and on the quizzes. So as I'm grading the homeworks, I'm always keeping mental notes of what students are really forgetting and what are some things that maybe we can be teaching better during lab or reviewing like we are now. So let's go into Excel now. Goal seek is one of those things that if you know it or you don't, and it's really important that you know how to get to goal seek and what to set the different cells as. So first, how to get to goal seek. I'm on a PC, so remember it's a little different, but there's two ways. I can go to data and I can go to what if analysis, and it's going to take me to goal seek. Now there's another way that's a lot easier on Macs. So pretend up here that there's like a tools button up here. On Macs, if you click on the tools button, you can hover down and just click on goal seek. It's going to open the same thing. So goal seek has three components. There is a set cell, a to value, and a changing cell. So the set cell is the cell that I need to choose. I'm trying to set a value to it. So the set cell and the to value are related. So for example, in this scenario, the instructions were asking me I need to set my course grade to like an 85, an 85%. So what I need to do is I need to choose the course grade cell, which is this one. So I just click on that. And the instructions had told me, okay, for that cell, for this course grade cell, we want that value to be 85. And so in order to achieve that value of 85, you can think of that as sort of our goal. We need one of these cells to change in value so that we can achieve a final course grade of 85. Now it's pretty obvious in this scenario where we were being told, okay, with a big arrow, unknown. So we can easily assume that our changing cell needs to be this last cell. What do we need on our final in order to get an 85 on our course grade? So for the changing cell, I'm gonna go ahead and click on this cell, this empty cell here. And so when I run it and hit OK, it's gonna do a lot of brute force math, and it's gonna give me an answer of 104% on the final that we need in order to get a course grade of 85. Now on the quiz, I believe you were being asked to basically write down what that changing value cell, what value you got, and so this is how you get that value. This is how you use GoalSeek. Quite simple. Most important part is really knowing what those different cells mean and how to get to GoalSeek. So what else did we do here? I'm not going to go over every single detail about these because a lot of this is basics of Excel, but I will go over the importance of mixed referencing versus absolute referencing. So remember, if I'm doing, let's say, I'm not going to do the whole example here, but mixed referencing is going to be when I have like the letter, right, and I have a number associated with the cell. So the cell has two parts. So if I want to do B4, for example, B4, if I do absolute referencing, it's going to be two $signs. So $sign in front of the B basically locks the column in place. A $sign in front of the number locks the row in place. But if I do a $sign only in front of the 4, that means this column B can change into C, into D, into E, F as I move this formula to the right. So that's all you really need to know between the difference of absolute referencing and mixed referencing. Be smart about it. You're gonna run into situations where you're gonna need to use one or the other, so keep an eye out for that. And let's see. So pivot tables was another thing that students was running into an issue with. So let's say we're given a sheet of raw data like this. I'm just going to hit Control A. I'm going to insert pivot table. I'm okay with all these. New worksheet, that's fine. The data range, I selected everything, so that's fine. So I'm going to hit OK. So I'm going to have this empty pivot table. And so let's just work straight off of Quiz 4's instructions. So Quiz 4 was asking you to calculate or find through a pivot table average gas gallons for field 13 and operator Maria. So there's a lot going on with this, but if you can break this down, it becomes really simple. So if I go back to this pivot table here, there's 4 sections: filters, columns, rows, and values. I can break down my instructions into where they fall in one of these sections. So for example, I can see that it's asking me to do a mathematical operation of taking the average of gas gallons. And that automatically is telling me that gas gallons needs to fall under this value section here, because that's the only way in which I can actually take the average of it. So by default, it's going to give me sum of gas gallons. All I need to do is click on to the right here. For PC, it's a drop down arrow. For Macs, it's an I. So you just click here. I'm going to click on value field settings, average. So average of gas gallons. So just like that, we've already got one portion of it done. Now next, it's asking for field 13 and operator Maria. And this can be a little bit confusing for students because it's specifying a field of data here. It's specifying it wants field specifically 13, and here it's specifying it specifically wants operator Maria. Now there's multiple ways in which you can do this. You can have field in either the columns or the rows, and operator fall in either columns or rows, but since we already have field in columns, we're going to throw operator into rows. You can click on these drop down arrows in row labels, deselect everything, and just choose Maria. Same for column labels, deselect everything and just choose 13. Let me just double check. Yes, operator Maria. So that's going to give me this value of 14.14. You know, I can also just throw these both into a filter, and I have a filter operator Maria field 13, and it's giving me average of gas gallons. Same correct answer. Again, I can have only one of the two in either columns and rows, and the other one just floats in filter, same answer. You just need to get a little creative with how you're doing the filtering. There's multiple ways in which you can do it, and there's multiple answers that setups that we can accept. In the end, you just need to make sure you're getting the same final answer. That's what we're really looking for. So that, pretty simple. Once you know how to break it down, let's go jump into here to briefly talk about naming cells. So I believe in lab we had named this range of cells. So I just need to click and drag and select this range of cells. We named this pounds. So once I have that all selected, I go into this name box up here and I just type in pounds, hit enter. So now when I click on here, pounds is this range of cells. And I have a single cell here that I want to name as, I don't know, like cost or something. So I just click on this cell and then I go up to the name box and I just type in cost. Good, good. So shipping cost, let's do an array formula together. So I need to select this range of blank values or blank cells, and I go into the formula builder up here, hit equals pounds times cost. So before I hit enter, remember, array formulas you need to hit Control Shift Enter. So Control Shift Enter. So the way we can know that whether or not you did an array formula is whether or not you have these squiggly brackets. So when we're grading these, we're going to be keeping an eye out for whether or not you have squiggly brackets. And despite talking about this, I remember some students actually did miss this. So just don't forget, instead of hitting enter, you're going to be hitting Control Shift Enter. And I think that wraps up. Oh, you know what? Why don't we just go over custom sorts and sorting? So at one point I believe I saw students mistakenly sorting based on just a single column. So like this, they would just choose a column, like let's say they need to sort by crop, and then they hit sort A to Z, and then they won't expand the selection, they'll just continue with the current selection. Now watch what happens when I hit sort. It only sorts everything in this column without moving these whole rows. So let me just show you, let me just undo. You see operator shoe, he has pasture as his crop. But if I select this column and I go to sort A to Z and I don't expand the selection, and if I just hit continue with the current selection, it changes to become something that it wasn't already. So before this was a pasture and now it's alfalfa, because it's only sorting this row, this column, and not considering how this cell is related to its whole row. So that's why when we're sorting, it's better to just use custom sort. You expand the selection, and then if you're being asked to sort by field number from smallest to largest, and then by crop A to Z, this makes sure that you're sorting everything so that the data is consistent, and so that you're not just messing around with these cells up and having them linked to other rows of information. So that's really important, and that was a big mistake that is actually a real costly mistake in the real world. So make sure you are sorting correctly this way. So again, custom sort, and you can have multiple layers of sorting. Basically what this is doing is that it's sorting both of these criteria in one go. Okay, well that wraps up the Excel portion. I believe I'll be going over some stuff for AutoTutorial 3 next, so give me 1 second. Okay, so let's quickly take a look at some of the 3 formulas that students were not comfortable with. The lookup, now, and if functions. So these are really important functions in Excel that were the key components of AutoTutorial 3, but I noticed a lot of students were having trouble with it. So I think it's in our best interest to just make sure that everyone's on the same page and we all know how to do this. So first what I need to do is I need to calculate total sales, so just give me 1 second here. It's just the sum of all these cells. Whoops. Forgot to do sum. There we go. Okay. So now I have my total sales calculated. So that's important because my commission and bonus, so this is where we're going to be using the lookup function. My commission and bonus is going to be dictated by how much total sales I have and how this value compares to the sales values up here. So let's just type in lookup. So my lookup value, that's going to be my original value that I'm going to be comparing with a range of values. So in order to calculate this employee's total sales, I need to first choose the lookup value, so this cell, and I'm going to be comparing this cell with the values in this range of cells. So I need to hit a comma, so now I choose the lookup vector, so my total sales for this employee is going to be compared with the numbers in this range of cells. I'm going to hit comma, and based on how this number compares to this range of cells, where this lines up, I need to know what commission and bonus this employee deserves. So my result vector is going to be something in this range of cells. So just like that, I've set up what my lookup function is going to be. One thing to note is because I'm going to be copy and pasting this lookup function, lookup formula down a row or down all these different rows, I need to make sure that these ranges of cells don't move vertically down as I move this cell down. So remember, mixed referencing, really important. I'm locking in row 8, I'm locking in row 9. So I'm going to go ahead and add those dollar signs in front of the numbers for B8 to G9, B9 to G9. Okay, so enter. So 3, our instruction said 3 is good, so that checks out. We can also do a quick logic test. F14, so this cell total sales 60.49 is between 50 and 75. So it's not above 75, it's above 50, so we're going to give this person a commission and bonus of 3. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy and paste this down. So obviously in the AutoTutorial you're going to be asked to format all this so it's showing dollar signs and however many decimal places, but we're not going to worry about that now. We're just going to be looking at how to use these formulas. So next is the now function. So what the now function does is, you can see it returns the current date and time formatted as a date and time. So what that allows us to do is we can turn today's date into a format that allows it to get subtracted by this date here. So if I just do now in close parentheses minus this cell, so it's basically going to say what's today's date minus the date they were hired. So what that's going to give us is the number of days from today to January 5th, 2001. Since that's going to give us the number of days, I need to make sure I divide this whole thing by 365 so I can convert days into years. So I get 18 years. Does that make sense? Well, January 5th, 2001, and today is March 8th, 2019. 18 years looks good, so I'm just going to click and drag, bam. So this is where students were getting a little bit confused about. So this is where we're being asked the question, is this person going to need training? And so the parameters for this on the instructions was, if their total sales was greater than 90, then they don't need training. If their total sales was less than 90, they do need training. So the logic test is going to be is this cell, is the value of this cell greater than 90. So I think that's the easiest way to do it. So we just click on this cell, F14, greater than 90. So if this cell is greater than 90, what is my output gonna be if this cell is greater than 90? So if it's greater than 90, no, they don't need training. They're doing a good job. So we put no in quotation marks, comma. Now value if false. Okay, well if this total sales is not greater than 90, well then they need training. We want that value to be 90 or higher. So yes, they do need training. So with that, we have our logical test. And if this logical test is true, it's going to give us no. If this logical test is false, it's going to say yes. So yes, and then I'm going to click and drag. And let's just quickly check here. So for this cell, if F20, if 106.59 or 58 is greater than 90, then it should be saying no. Because if 106.58 is greater than 90, then that value is true. Therefore, I should spit out the answer no. And it gives me no. So that works. So the way I set this up works, and that's how you use the if function. So other stuff for this auto tutorial I'm not going to quite go over. That's going to be on you to remember. It's going to be a lot of stuff where you got to go right click and click on format cells and making sure you're doing all the currency stuff and protection and all that stuff. So I'm going to leave that to you, but I'm glad we were able to clarify how you use the lookup function and how you use the if function and how to use the now function. Okay, so now we're going to review OpenOffice. So the key things to OpenOffice, if I double click on any of these tables, so there's different sections, remember, tables, queries, forms. Right off the bat, I'm going to tell you that you don't need to worry about how to create a report or how to make edits in a report, but we will be expecting you to remember. So if you remember on the quiz, you were expected to remember what a report's used for. Reports generate summary of information that's meant to be printed versus forms, which are meant to be on a computer where you're typing in data entry. So knowing the difference between forms and reports is going to be useful. Knowing things like what's the difference between a report header and a page header, where a report header shows up at the top of the first page of like a 20-page report, but a page header shows up at the top of every single page. Stuff like that is fair game. You just don't need to know how to create a report, and the reason for that is there's been a lot of crashes associated with reports in OpenOffice. So let's just go back to tables. If I double click in a table, it takes me to data view, and in data view I can go to the bottom and I can start entering in different coursework, or I can start entering in new rows of data. So that's only available in the data view. In the data view, I'm also able to sort through here, as well as have filters. So I can set filters. Let's say I want to filter out professor, and I only want to see Professor Dr. Frank. So that's a way to do filters. It's also important that you know how to, if you right click and go to edit, this is where you start making changes to the data type. This is very important. So let's say I remember in the quiz instructions you were being asked a question like, does this person like plants? So that's a question. So the data field type should reflect how this question is answered. So the data field type, what we're looking for whenever it's a question is yes/no Boolean. Like plants is a yes or no question, so we're going to choose the yes/no Boolean data type. So if we save this, we exit out of here, we double click on this, we can see that yes, we have our like plants yes or no checkmark data type available. So let's just remove our filter temporarily. So it's going to give you these black boxes. Let's just click out of those black boxes, and let's say, in the quiz instructions, I remember you were being told Dr. Frank loves plants. So select Dr. Frank for the like plants option. So that's how I use that. So we'll be keeping an eye out whether or not you have this checkbox data type available. So this is the yes/no Boolean data type. Let's go back to the data types again, and something like wage, it's the specific format where that involves wage. So I remember in the homework people were missing points because they forgot that wage, you can't just set it as a number and be done with it. You have to set it as a number data type. You need to go down to field properties here, scroll down, under format example, click on the 3 dots here, and then you choose currency, and then the instructions will usually tell you whether or not it wants decimal places. So you need to get to this field format window here in order to choose currency so that it does show dollar signs. So I'm going to save this, and if we just open this again, and if I type in wage, if I type in a number here, it's going to reflect dollar signs, no decimal places, and comma separation. So keep an eye out for that. Don't forget to change the formatting as well as the data type to match. So next, really important part is knowing how to create queries properly. So the first step to creating a query is you need to create the relationship. So I go to the tools bar here, I click on relationships, and just pretend these aren't here. Delete. I need to click on these. So by default you should be getting a blank screen like this. You click on the add tables button, and then you just double click on the tables you want to include. So if I'm being asked to create a relationship between course offerings and course signups, I need to keep an eye out for something like primary keys and matching information. So CRN number and CRN number are matching pieces of information. I know that I can create a relationship between these two, and at least one of them, and in this case both of them, but at least one of them has to be a primary key. So in this case they are both primary keys because they are CRN numbers. You can think of CRN numbers like ID numbers just for courses. And usually in this class, and usually when you're working with databases, ID numbers are so specific and unique that they are the best possible option for primary keys. So let's create a relationship. All I need to do is click and drag CRN number to CRN number. And so for OpenOffice, if you get this window, you did something wrong. So all we need to do is we need to exit out of this. When I click and drag from here to here, I get this window. I don't want this window to show up. So what I need to do is I need to drag from CRN number from here to there, and that's a lot better. That window didn't show up, and I can see that there is a 1 here and an N here. Basically, that's one to many. You don't need to know what that means, but it's something important to know if you're going to be working in database science. But for the purpose of this class, you don't need to worry. You just need to know that this means that we have enforced referential integrity between this relationship. So we can save and exit out. So now we have a relationship that we can use to create a query. So let's go to queries, and let's use wizard to create query. So from this window, if I'm being asked to have specific fields from my course offerings table, this is where I just go to the course offerings table here, and under available fields I just click and include them in here. Let's say I'm being asked to also include social security number from the course signups table. So I just need to go to the course signups table, choose SSN, make sure that's in the query. So now I have elements or fields from 2 different tables showing up in my query. I'm going to click next. Don't worry about this yet. We're going to make changes to sorting and search conditions through design view. So don't worry about this yet. Click next, click next, click next. And here we want to change our name. And finish. So this is really big. Don't worry about this. Close. So we've created our query. Now we want to make edits to it. So go to edit, And you know, I don't know why it always misses the relationship here, but don't worry about that. This shouldn't happen when you're working on it, let's say for a lab final, but ignore that. Okay, so let's say we're being asked to sort the professor's name in descending order. So we can go to professor, sort, okay, just click on descending, and let's say I only want to see courses with units greater than 4. So I go to units, go down to criterion, and I type greater than 4. Now I remember on the quiz it was a little bit tricky, because on the quiz you were being asked to show students with second year standing. And so what a lot of people think is when they see the word second, or when they see something like 2ND, they think that's a number. But if you think about it, because there's these letters in it, it's actually a word. So when that happens, you need to make sure you're not just typing out second, you have to type it in exactly as it's being displayed in your data table. So for example, let's say we want to set a criterion for professor. We want to make sure, if we want to show only Dr. Frank, we need to make sure we're typing in Dr. Frank exactly as it is written in the data tables. It's going to add those quotation marks by default. And if we want to show another professor, so I'm kind of forgetting how it was, let's just double check how it was spelled. Let's add Dr. Gusher, for example. So I'm just going to click on, type out Dr. Gusher. I'm going to save. Let's see if this worked. Oh, whoops, not this. Huh. Oh wait, no, this is the wrong. Okay, there we go. So okay, Dr. Frank, Dr. Gusher. Worked out just fine. So make sure you're typing it out exactly as it is. So let's say you're being asked to create a form. So create form in design view. Oh, actually no, that's not the best option. When you're creating a form, use the wizard to create a form. So form, use wizard to create a form. And it's going to be super simple. It's going to guide you through. Your instructions are going to tell you exactly what it's going to want, what fields it wants. If it wants these fields, you just make sure you're choosing the right fields. Make sure you're choosing the right query or table that it's coming from. So let's just choose a form for course offerings. Click on next. We don't worry about subforms, so you can just skip this. For this, make sure you're keeping an eye out. Okay, columnar labels left, columnar labels top, as datasheet in blocks. Keep an eye out for which arrangement you're being asked for and choose accordingly. Don't worry about this. And if you're being asked to choose like the style red, make sure you're choosing the right style. Make sure you're choosing the right field border you're being asked. And we can rename our form. Now if we click on work with the form, that's going to send us to form view. Let's just make our lives easier. We can send it straight to design view so we can add those edits, so modify the form. So this is going to take us to design view. If we want to enter into design view from this page, you just right click, edit. So if you remember from the quiz, you were asked to include a title, for example. So let's just choose the color white font color here. Yeah, white font. And here, let's just start typing out title practice. See, by default, you're going to be able to type text at the very top here, so no need to worry. If you're being asked to include your first and last name, let's say the form footer, all that means is at the very bottom of the footer, at the very bottom of the form, you need to include your first and last name. So you just go to the text icon here. So this is very key. Use this to add labels. So text. and let's type our first and last name. And we can change this font color just so it's a little more visible to white. Okay, and just like that, you've added your first and last name label to the form footer. Bam, you're done with the form footer, the form part of your test. Easy. So now, I don't think a lot of people had issues with the forms in the quiz, but still worth reviewing. Well, I think that wraps up OpenOffice. Queries and changing the criteria for queries is the most important part where students do miss points on. So remember, in your query, right-click, go to Edit for the criteria, type it out in here. For the sorting does go away, but if you did it correctly, we'll be able to know whether or not you did it because we'll go to SQL view and we can see order by professor descending. This was saved. So even though it's not showing up in the edit view, we can still see whether or not you did it correctly. Okay. Okay, so last thing to wrap things up, we're going to go over our studio. So there were 3 things that I think people were really screwing up on, and one of those things is, so you've got 2 ways to import data, right? So if you are told to download an Excel sheet, sort of what like you're going to be doing for homework 7 if you haven't done it already, is for homework 7 you were told to download a specific Excel sheet. So you would go to import dataset under the environment section here, and you from Excel you browse and you go to the download section wherever you downloaded your Excel sheet is going to end up here. You open it, bam. Pretty straightforward. That's how you import an Excel sheet. If you are not told to download an Excel sheet, then you need to know how to import datasets from the datasets package in R. So what I need to do is I need to go to packages here. I'm going to type in datasets, and I need to make sure that datasets is turned on. So I need to click on this. Once I click on this, if I am given the name of a dataset, for example, in lab, during lab we went over chick weight. If I'm being told I need to import the chick weight data or use the chick weight data, I type in the data function, so data parentheses, and look, I can already see all the different types of data sets that are available from the datasets package. All I need to do now is type in the name of the dataset. So this is so important. So chick weight. So I can click on this and enter, or control enter. So when I hit control enter, it runs that line of code. So I have imported the data, specifically the chick weight dataset, from the datasets package through this line of code. Remember this function. It is so important. If you don't know how to import a dataset, it really makes it impossible for you to continue on with the rest of the instructions. So from here, you can start doing stuff like taking the mean of chick weight, specifically the weight column of information. So remember, like in this data set, there's 4 different columns. If I'm being asked to take the mean of weight, I need to specify by using this $sign and typing in weight. So another thing that I believe students were missing was subsetting. So people were pretty confused about subsetting. So there's 2 things to note about subsetting, and I do include this. So I sent you all this lab script R recently. So this gives you notes that notes about all the different functions that we talked about. And let's look at the subsetting one here. So when we're doing the subset, we need to create the name of the new table. We set the name of the new table ourselves. So we typed out chick weight diet 3. It could be anything. So let's do practice here. So let's see. Like diet, let's do a different one. Let's do it by, how many are there? Diet 4 or something. So we need to create a name. It's like creating a variable. So we can make it anything we want. We can do like thick boys, chicks, 4, and we have to set that equals to this subset function. And when I do the subset function, the first thing I need to include is the name of the original table. So the name of the original table is chick weight. And so the next thing that comes after the comma, I know there's a lot to remember, that's why we're going over this. The thing that comes after the comma is the column of data that I'm going to be using to set my parameter. So I only want to see chicks with diet 4, right? So I need to make sure, okay, diet is a column here. So I need to type in diet exactly as it's spelled out in my column. And so diet 4, so I need to do double equal sign 4. Control enter. So bam, we have our subset here where we only have diet 4. Now one thing we can't quite go over with this example, these are all numbers, but in the case that you need to subset based on words, so for example, in your homework, you are going to be asked, I went over this in lab, in the homework you are going to be asked something like subsetting it based on continent, where continent is a column of data in this original table, and in this column of information you have things like Africa, Australia, Asia. There's rows and rows of information with different continents on there. So what you do then is make the name of your subset table, it could be anything you want, equals subset function, name of the original table, name of the column of information, and in quotation marks if it's word-based parameter. So Africa is not a number, so we need to put Africa in quotation marks. If you don't put it in quotation marks, it's going to give you an error. Okay, so that's subsetting. I think another thing that students miss easily is when you're doing all the plotting and stuff, the linear model function, the LM function, is going to give you that y-intercept and slope values that you're going to be using with the AB line function to draw your regression line. A lot of students forget to have the LM function set up such that your y-axis goes first, squiggly line, and then it's your x-axis. So LM, y-axis, squiggly line, x-axis. In this case, chick weight time was the x-axis, weight was the y-axis. So keep an eye out for that. Don't let yourself lose points because you chose the wrong axes. I know it's a little bit tricky. Just remember the difference over there. Okay, well I think that wraps up some of the most confusing things that students had throughout the quarter. If there's any other specific questions, please email me, and I hope you all prepare well for Monday's lab final. Alright, have a good night, have a great weekend. Bye-bye.